Shalom, everybody. I'm Parsha Becky, and welcome back to another week of Parsha. I know it's been a few weeks since we last had a proper Parsha, but as I'm sure you remember, we are currently in the middle of reading the third book of Chumash, the book of Vayikra. Vayikra means he called, and for the whole book of Vayikra, Hashem is calling to Moshe to give instructions relating to the Mishkan that we just finished building at the end of Sefer Shemot. This week's Parsha is called Shemini, which means eighth. And it's called Shemini because at the end of our last Parsha, Tzav, at the end of the Parsha, Moshe spent 7 days getting the Kohanim inaugurated into their job as Kohanim, working in the Mishkan. And this week's Parsha starts on the next day, the 8th day, the Yom HaShmini, after that 7-day process. And on this 8th day, Moshe gathers all the Jewish people in front of the Mishkan, and they bring lots and lots and lots of animals as sacrifices to Hashem as they're inaugurating the Mishkan. And Aharon, as the Kohen Gadol, conducts these sacrifices, these korbanot. Aharon gives a bracha to the Jewish people. He and Moshe go into the Mishkan, they finish the sacrifices, and they go out, and they both bless the people. And Hashem makes fire appear out of nowhere to consume the meat from that they had put on the Mizbeach. And the fire consumes the korban, and everyone's like, whoa, that's amazing. That fire came out of nowhere. That is so cool. And they bow down to Hashem. And then Aaron's older two kids, Nadav and Avihu, they go into the Mishkan when they are not supposed to. And they start making up their own stuff to do in the Mishkan, even though Hashem has been very clear that we should only be going into the Mishkan when Hashem says, only to do things that Hashem says in exactly the way that Hashem says to do them. And Nadav and Avihu are making up their own stuff, they're doing things that Hashem didn't ask for and Hashem didn't want in the Mishkan. And fire comes out from the Mishkan, and Nadav and Avihu die. And Moshe tries to comfort Aharon. Moshe says to Aharon, Hashem says that they're close with Hashem, and Hashem becomes even more holy through these people close to Hashem. But Aharon is quiet. Aharon doesn't say anything. And Moshe has their cousins Mishael and Eltzaphan remove Nadav and Avihu's bodies from the Mishkan. And Moshe tells Aharon that he and his sons Elazar and Itamar are not to tear their clothes, which people usually do when they're sad for somebody who passed away, and they can't sit Shiva, they can't do any of the regular mourning customs, because they need to be able to go into the Mishkan as Kohanim, representing Hashem, to continue conducting the Korbanot. And Hashem says, hey, we've got a new rule for the Kohanim, that Kohanim are not allowed to drink any wine or alcohol before they go into the Mishkan, because alcohol can sometimes make people act a little silly. And there's a time and a place for silliness, but that place is not the Mishkan. The Mishkan people need to be serious and respectful and responsible, not like how Nadav and Avihu are behaving in there. So there's no alcohol before going into the Mishkan. And then Moshe goes to Aaron to tell him and Elazar and Itamar to eat the food that was brought for the Kohanim. And he finds that some of the meat they already burned instead of eating. And Moshe gets angry. Moshe says, hey, Aaron, what's the big idea? You were supposed to eat that meat. Why did you burn it? You're not doing what Hashem wants. And Aaron says, excuse me, Moshe. I just lost my two oldest sons. I'm not in the right frame of mind to be eating things respectfully for Hashem right now. I am upset. Do you think Hashem would have liked it if I ate that meat in the frame of mind that I am in right now, feeling upset and grieving the loss of my two children? I thought it would be more respectful for the Mishkan if I burned that meat and didn't eat it when I'm feeling like this. And Moshe says, you're right, Aaron. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was wrong to yell at you. Hashem says you did the right thing. You were being respectful of the Mishkan, and you were right to wait and to not eat it right then. And then the Parsha moves on to a happier note, because right now it's on a very sad note. And what makes us happy? Food! So the Parsha is going to continue by telling us which animals are kosher for us to eat. And it divides animals up into 4 categories based on how they move. Animals that walk around on the land, animals that swim around in the water, animals that fly in the air, and creepy crawlies that walk and fly and skitter, but bugs is that 4th category. So for land animals, for animals that walk on land, they have to have hooves, not paws, and not just any hooves. They have to be split hooves, hooves that look like they're split into at least two parts. And they have to be animals that chew their cud, like they chew their food, goes into their stomach, it regurgitates into their mouth, they chew it again, and it goes back into their stomach. An animal that chews its cud and has split hooves is kosher to eat. Any other land animal is not. For animals that swim in the water, the rule is they have to have fins to help them navigate the water, and their body has to be covered in scales. A water animal with fins and scales is kosher to eat. If it doesn't have fins and scales and it lives in the water, you can't eat it. And for animals that fly, this is interesting because it doesn't give us a rule. It gives us a list. The Torah says, here's a list of 20 flying animals that are not kosher to eat. But anything not on the list that gets around by flying is kosher. Now, I'm saying flying and not birds. I can think of one major flying animal that's not a bird that gets around by flying. Of course, I'm thinking of the bat. Now, the bat is on our list of non-kosher flying animals because it gets around mostly by flying. It's got those big wings. It's not kosher to eat. So, not a lot of other animals on that list of non-kosher animals, including ravens and vultures and ostriches and owls, lots of other animals. But any birds that are not on that list, for example, chickens and ducks and geese, those are examples of animals that move by flying that are not on the list, so they're kosher to eat, and we eat them. And finally, our bugs, our creepy crawlies. The Torah gives us a rule and a list. The Torah says the only creepy crawlies that are kosher are ones that have jointed legs that they use for jumping and leaping around. And to make sure there's no confusion, here's the list of the only 4 creepy crawlies that fit that description: locusts, bald locusts, crickets, and grasshoppers. Those are the 4 kosher creepy crawlies. No other bugs are kosher to eat. And at the end of the Parsha, connecting us, why are we talking about animals in the middle of the book about the Mishkan? So to connect it back to the Mishkan, we learn that anyone who touches a non-kosher bug, any creepy crawlies, you can't go into the Mishkan until you get washed off. And also, if you touch an animal, even a kosher animal that's dead, if it wasn't slaughtered to be eaten in the kosher way, you have to wash yourself off before you can go into the Mishkan. And that is the end of Parshat Shemini. Shabbat Shalom.